The night Alexander Cole died, the sky burned red. It was March 14th, 2004. A private helicopter carrying the 23-year-old heir to the coal industry's fortune spiraled into the mountains north of the city. The fireball could be seen for miles. By dawn, investigators confirmed there were no survivors. The wreckage was too charred, too complete. They found fragments, a watch, a shoe, dental records that matched. The case was closed within 72 hours. Richard Cole, the billionaire patriarch, stood at the funeral in a black suit that cost more than most people earned in a year. His face was stone. He did not weep. He did not speak. He simply stood there as they lowered an empty casket into the ground, because there was almost nothing left to bury. The media called it a tragedy. The markets trembled. Coal industry stock dropped 11% in a single day. But Richard Cole was a man who built empires from oil fields and steel mills. He would survive this. He always survived. What no one knew, what no one could have known, was that Alexander Cole had not died that night. He had been replaced. 20 years later, in a place where the rain never washed anything clean, a young man named Daniel wiped down the counter of Mama Ruth's canteen with a rag that had been white once, a long time ago. Eastbridge was a ghetto in the truest sense. Not the kind people drove through quickly with their windows up. The kind they avoided entirely. The streets smelled like wet garbage and engine oil. The buildings leaned into each other like drunks. Power lines sagged low enough to touch. Every third street lamp was broken. But Mama Ruth's canteen was different. It was a pocket of order in chaos. The floor was swept every morning. The tables were mismatched but clean. The menu was handwritten on a chalkboard. Rice and stew, fried plantains, beans, sometimes fish if the supply truck came. It wasn't much, but it was honest. Daniel had worked there for 3 years. He was 26 now, though he looked older, lean and quiet, with dark eyes that seemed to see too much. His clothes were second-hand but always clean. His hands were steady. He moved through the canteen like water, efficient, calm, invisible. Mama Ruth liked him because he never caused trouble. The regulars liked him because he remembered their orders. The street kids liked him because sometimes, when Mama Ruth wasn't looking, he'd slip them extra food. This was Daniel's life. Predictable, small, safe, except for the dreams. They came every few nights, always the same. He would be in a large room with tall windows. Sunlight poured through glass so clean it didn't seem to exist. There were books everywhere, shelves that stretched to the ceiling. A piano in the corner, the smell of leather and wood polish. In a voice, soft, familiar, calling a name he couldn't quite hear. He would turn, reaching for something, someone, and then he'd wake up in his narrow bed in the storage room behind the canteen, his heart pounding, his hands clenched. He never told anyone about the dreams. What would he say? That he felt like he'd lived another life? That sometimes when he closed his eyes he could almost remember a childhood that wasn't his? People would think he was crazy. Or worse, they'd think he was trying to escape. And in Eastbridge, trying to escape was the fastest way to get yourself killed. So Daniel kept his head down. He worked. He survived. The canteen opened at 6 in the morning and closed at 9 at night. Daniel was always the first one there. He'd unlock the gate, sweep the floor, boil water for tea. By the time Mama Ruth arrived at 7, the place was ready. Mornings were quiet. Old men drinking tea and reading yesterday's newspapers. Women on their way to market jobs. A few students from the technical school down the road. Afternoons were busier. Laborers, mechanics, street vendors taking a break. Evenings were unpredictable. That's when the drunks came. The dealers. The boys who thought respect was something you took with your fists. Mama Ruth handled most of them with nothing but a glare and a wooden spoon. But sometimes they pushed. Daniel had learned early not to fight back. Not because he was afraid, but because fighting back meant attention. And attention meant questions. And questions meant people looking too closely at a young man who didn't quite fit. Because Daniel was different, he read books he found in the trash, dense, complicated books about philosophy and history and economics. He taught himself chess using a set card from bottle caps. He could calculate change in his head faster than the register. He spoke with a precision that didn't match his surroundings. Mama Ruth noticed. She never said anything, but she noticed. So did the regulars. And so did the stranger who walked into the canteen on a Tuesday afternoon in late November, when the heat was thick enough to choke on and the flies were everywhere. She was out of place immediately, not because of her clothes, though the clean blouse and pressed jeans stood out. Not because of her face, though she was striking in a severe angular way, but because of her eyes. She looked at everything like she was memorizing it. The cracked tiles, the grease-stained menu, the electric fan that rattled but didn't spin. And finally, she looked at Daniel. He was clearing a table near the window. He felt her gaze and glanced up. Their eyes met for half a second. Then he looked away and kept working. But she didn't. Her name was Claire Morgan, though Daniel didn't know that yet. 34 years old, investigative journalist. She'd spent the last 6 years chasing stories that no one else wanted to touch. Corruption, cover-ups, cold cases that police departments had quietly buried. She had a gift for pattern recognition, for seeing connections others missed. And the moment she saw Daniel, something clicked in her mind like a lock opening. She knew that face, or she thought she did. She ordered tea and sat at a corner table, pretending to scroll through her phone while watching him work. The way he moved, the way he held himself, the quiet intelligence in every gesture. It was impossible. But so was everything else about the Alexander Cole case. Claire had been obsessed with that case for 2 years. It started as a footnote in an article she was writing about corporate fraud, a single line in a financial report. Estate of Alexander Cole, deceased 2004, assets held in trust, pending final disbursement, pending 20 years later, and it was still pending. That word gnawed at her. She started digging, quietly at first, public records, news archives, interviews with people who'd worked for the family. The more she learned, the less sense it made. The helicopter crash had been ruled accidental, pilot error, bad weather. The investigation was closed in record time. No follow-up, no questions. But there were inconsistencies. The dental records used to identify the body had been submitted by the family's private physician, a man who died of a heart attack 6 months later. The medical examiner who signed off on the autopsy had retired immediately afterward and moved to the Cayman Islands. And then there was Victor Cole, Richard's younger brother, second in line to the fortune, a man who, by all accounts, had despised Alexander. Victor had been the one to identify the body. Victor had been the one to push for a quick burial. Victor had been the one to take control of the company when Richard's grief made him step back. It was too neat, too convenient. Claire couldn't prove anything, but her instincts screamed that something was wrong. And now, sitting in this forgotten canteen in Eastbridge, watching a young man who moved like he'd been trained for something better, those instincts screamed even louder. She waited until the afternoon rush died down. Then she approached the counter. Daniel looked up. "Can I help you?" His voice was calm, polite, but there was a guardedness in his eyes. "I'll take another tea," Claire said. "And maybe you could sit for a minute? You've been on your feet all day." "I'm fine, thank you." "Humor me." He hesitated. Then glancing toward the kitchen where Mama Ruth was chopping vegetables, he poured 2 cups of tea and sat across from her. Claire studied his face, the bone structure, the eyes, the small scar above his left eyebrow. "How long have you worked here?" she asked. 3 years. "You're from Eastbridge?" A pause. "I've lived here a long time." "But not originally." His jaw tightened. "Why are you asking?" Claire leaned forward slightly. "Because I'm a journalist, and I'm good at noticing things that don't fit. I fit just fine." "Do you?" Silence. Then Daniel stood. "Your tea is 300 naira." Claire paid. She left a business card on the table. As she walked out, she pulled out her phone and took a single photograph of the canteen's exterior. In the corner of the frame, barely visible through the window, was Daniel's face. That night, Claire sat in her apartment with her laptop open and 2 decades worth of research spread across her desk. She uploaded the photos she'd taken. Then she opened an old file, A photograph from 2003. A promotional shot from a coal industries gala. Richard Cole and his son, Alexander, standing together in front of a marble staircase. Alexander was 22 in the photo, confident, smiling, alive. Claire placed the two images side by side. She adjusted for age, for lighting, for 20 years of hardship. And then she saw it. The angle of the jaw, the spacing of the eyes. The scar, faint in the old photo, from a childhood injury mentioned in a puff piece she'd found. It was him. It was impossible. But it was him. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone. She called her editor. "Marcus, I need you to sit down." "It's 9 p.m., Claire. What is it?" "I found him." "Found who?" "Alexander Cole." A long pause. "Claire, I'm sending you the photos. Look at them. Really look." She heard the ping of the email on his end, then silence stretching into eternity. Finally, Marcus spoke, and his voice had changed completely. "Where did you get these?" "A canteen in Eastbridge. He's working there. He goes by Daniel. Marcus, he has no idea who he is. Or he's pretending not to." "No, I saw him. This isn't an act. Claire stopped, searching for the right words. "He's surviving, like he's been doing it his whole life." "If you're right about this, Claire, if this is really Alexander Cole, then someone went to extraordinary lengths to make the world think he was dead. Someone powerful. And they won't be happy that you found him." "I know." "Do you?" "Because the last journalist who looked too closely at the Cole family ended up in a car accident. They ruled it mechanical failure, but I remember. Daniel Chen, 2007, 3 years after Alexander supposedly died. I'm just saying, be careful. If you're going to move on this, you need to be absolutely certain. Get a DNA sample. Something concrete." "How am I supposed to do that without tipping him off?" "I don't know, but photographs aren't enough. Not for this. Not against the Cole family." After she hung up, Claire sat in the darkness of her apartment, the glow of her laptop screen illuminating her face. She pulled up everything she had on Victor Cole: financial records, property holdings, shell corporations. The man was careful, but nobody was perfect. There had to be something, some thread she could pull. 3 hours later, she found it. A payment. Small enough to avoid scrutiny, but regular. Every month for the past 20 years, $50,000 had been transferred from a coal industry subsidiary to a private account into the name of Dr. Helena Reeves. Claire ran the name. Dr. Reeves had been a pediatric surgeon at Mercy General Hospital until 2004, when she abruptly retired at 43 years old. No explanation, no forwarding address, just gone. Claire's pulse quickened. She dug deeper. Property records showed Dr. Reeves owned a house in the suburbs, purchased in 2005. Cash sale. The house was still in her name, utilities still active. She lived there alone. Claire checked the time. Just after midnight. Too late to drive out there tonight, but first thing in the morning, she'd pay Dr. Reeves a visit. If anyone knew what really happened to Alexander Cole, it would be the doctor who'd been paid to keep quiet for 2 decades. Back in Eastbridge, Daniel couldn't sleep. He lay on his narrow bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling, thinking about the woman from the canteen, the journalist, the way she looked at him, like she was trying to solve an equation. He'd thrown her card away, but he remembered what it said. Claire Morgan, investigative journalist, and below that, a phone number. Something about her unsettled him, not in a threatening way, in a way that felt like standing on the edge of something vast and dark, knowing that one more step would send him falling. He'd spent 3 years in Eastbridge building a life that was small and manageable, a life where nobody asked questions and he didn't have to lie. But the dreams were getting worse, more frequent, more vivid. Last night, he dreamed of a birthday party, balloons and a massive cake shaped like a helicopter. He was 7 years old and his father, a man with silver hair and kind eyes, was teaching him to blow out the candles. Make a wish, Alexander. Make a good one. Alexander. In the dream, that had been his name. But when he woke gasping, that name felt like it belonged to someone else. Someone who died a long time ago. Daniel got up and splashed water on his face from the basin in the corner. His reflection in the cracked mirror looked haunted. He needed to stop thinking about this. The journalist, the dreams, the feeling that his life was built on sand. He had work in 5 hours. Mama Ruth depended on him. The regulars depended on him. This was his life now. Whoever he'd been before Eastbridge didn't matter. But even as he thought it, he knew it was a lie. The next morning, Claire drove out to the suburbs where Dr. Helena Reeves lived. The house was modest, a 2-story colonial with faded blue shutters and an overgrown garden. No car in the driveway, no signs of life. Claire sat in her car for 20 minutes, watching, before finally walking up to the front door. She knocked. No answer. She knocked again, louder. Still nothing. Claire peered through the front window. The living room looked lived in, but dated, like someone had furnished it in 2005 and never changed a thing. She was about to leave when she heard a voice behind her. "She's not home." Claire turned. An elderly woman stood in the yard next door, watering a row of roses. "I'm looking for Dr. Reeves," Claire said. "Do you know when she'll be back?" "Hard to say. Helena keeps odd hours. Sometimes she's gone for days." "Does she live alone?" The neighbor's eyes narrowed. "Who's asking?" "I'm a journalist. I'm working on a story about medical professionals who've retired early, and Dr. Reeves's name came up." Well, she never talked much about why she quit. Just said she wanted a quieter life. Seemed sad, though. Like something had broken in her. The woman paused, studying Claire. "You sure you're just writing about retirement?" "Why do you ask?" "Because you're not the first person to come looking for her. About 6 months ago, there was a man. Expensive suit, expensive car. He knocked on her door. They talked for a few minutes, and then Helena left with him. Came back the next day looking like she'd seen a ghost." "Do you remember anything about the man?" "Tall, silver hair, walked like he owned the world." Claire's blood ran cold. That description matched Victor Cole perfectly. "Thank you," she said. "You've been very helpful." As Claire walked back to her car, her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "We need to talk. Now. Call me." She dialed him immediately. "What is it?" "Someone's asking questions about you, Claire. About your research." "I got a call this morning from a law firm, Heartbreak and Associates. They represent coal industries. They wanted to know if we were planning to publish anything about the Cole family. They were very polite and very threatening. They know. They know you're digging. They don't know what you found yet, but they're watching." Claire looked back at Dr. Reeves's house. "Marcus, I think Victor Cole has been paying off the doctor who treated Alexander. If I can get her to talk, if... Claire, these people don't leave loose ends. If Dr. Reeves knows something, she's either been paid enough to stay quiet forever, or she's too scared to talk. And if you push too hard, you're going to end up being the loose end they cut. So what do you want me to do? Walk away? I want you to be smart. Get the DNA sample. Build a case that's airtight. Then we publish everything at once, so fast and so public that they can't bury it." Claire ended the call and sat in her car, her mind racing. Marcus was right. She needed proof. Real, undeniable proof. And the only way to get that was to get close to Daniel again. Close enough to collect DNA without him knowing. She started her car and headed back to Eastbridge. Daniel was in the middle of the lunch rush when he saw her again. Claire Morgan, walking into the canteen like she belonged there. She ordered jollof rice and plantains and sat at the same corner table as before. This time, she didn't watch him. She ate slowly, checking her phone, looking for all the world like a regular customer. But Daniel wasn't fooled. He could feel the weight of her presence, the way a deer feels the presence of a hunter in the forest. She wanted something from him. He just didn't know what. When she finished eating, she came to the counter to pay. "The food's good here," she said. "I'll tell Mama Ruth. You don't remember me, do you?" Daniel met her eyes. "I remember you. You're the journalist who asks uncomfortable questions. Is that what you think I was doing? Wasn't it?" Claire smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'll be honest with you, Daniel. I think you're running from something, or maybe hiding from something. Either way, I think you're in danger, and you don't even know it. I'm not in danger. How do you know? Because danger makes noise, and my life is very quiet. For now. Daniel's jaw tightened. What do you want from me? I want to help you. I don't need help. Everyone needs help. Claire pulled out her phone and showed him a photograph. It was the image from the coal industry's gala. Alexander and his father, smiling for the camera. Do you recognize anyone in this photo? Daniel looked at the screen. Something stirred in the back of his mind, like an animal waking from hibernation. The man in the photograph, the young one, had his face. Not exactly, but close enough that it was unsettling. Who is that? His name was Alexander Cole. He died 20 years ago. At least, that's what the world was told. What does this have to do with me? Claire's voice dropped. Everything. I think you are Alexander Cole. The words hung in the air between them like smoke. Daniel stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then he laughed. It was a short, bitter sound. You think I'm the dead son of a billionaire? Living in Eastbridge, working in a canteen for minimum wage? I think someone wanted you to disappear. I think they staged your death and dumped you somewhere you'd never be found. But they underestimated you. You survived. This is insane. Is it? Then explain the scar above your left eyebrow. Alexander Cole got that scar when he was 9, falling off a horse. It's in his medical records. Daniel's hand moved involuntarily to his eyebrow. He'd always had that scar. He didn't remember where it came from. Lots of people have scars. Not in that exact spot. Not shaped like that. Claire leaned closer. I can prove it, Daniel. All I need is a DNA sample. One test, and we'll know for sure. And if you're wrong, then I apologize and leave you alone. And if you're right, then you get your life back, your real life. Daniel shook his head. I don't want a life I can't remember. I want the life I have. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you look like someone who's just waiting. Like you know, deep down, that this isn't where you're supposed to be. Before Daniel could respond, Mama Ruth's voice cut through the canteen. Daniel, back to work. He stepped away from the counter, his face a mask. I can't help you. Claire placed another card on the counter. Keep it this time. When you're ready to know the truth, call me. She left without looking back. Daniel watched her go, then picked up the card and stared at it for a long moment before slipping it into his pocket. Mama Ruth was watching him from the kitchen doorway, her expression unreadable. That woman, Trouble? I don't know yet. Well, be careful. Trouble has a way of finding people who don't go looking for it. That night, Daniel lay awake again, the journalist's words echoing in his mind. Alexander Cole, a name that felt both foreign and familiar. He closed his eyes and tried to remember. Tried to push past the fog that seemed to cover everything before Eastbridge. He remembered waking up in a hospital. He was 17, confused, in pain. A woman in a white coat stood over him. She had dark hair and tired eyes. You're going to be okay, she'd said. But you need to listen to me very carefully. Your name is Daniel. You have no family. You were in an accident, and you've lost some of your memory. The people at the group home will take care of you. He'd believed her. Why wouldn't he? He had no memory to contradict her story. And when the group home turned out to be a nightmare of overcrowding and neglect, when he aged out of the system at 18 with nothing but the clothes on his back, he'd simply survived. He drifted from job to job, city to city, until he found Eastbridge and Mama Ruth. But what if the journalist was right? What if that doctor had lied? What if everything he thought he knew about himself was a carefully constructed fiction? The thought terrified him, because if he wasn't Daniel, the quiet canteen worker from Eastbridge, then who was he? And more importantly, who had wanted him erased? Across the city, in a penthouse office overlooking the skyline, Victor Cole stood at his window with a glass of scotch in his hand. His phone rang. He answered without looking at the screen. Tell me. The journalist made contact again today. She showed him the photograph. And? He didn't take the bait, but she's persistent. It's only a matter of time. Victor's reflection in the window showed a man in his 60s, silver-haired and handsome, with the kind of face that inspired trust. It was a lie, like everything else about him. Then we'll need to accelerate our timeline. Is everything in place? Yes, sir. The warrant's been prepared. Anonymous tip about drug dealing. We can move whenever you give the word. Do it tomorrow night, and make sure there are no cameras, no witnesses, no evidence. What about the journalist? Victor smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Claire Morgan has a history of reckless behavior. Car accidents happen all the time. He ended the call and took another sip of his scotch. 20 years he'd waited. 20 years of careful planning, of paying off the right people, of making sure his brother's precious heir stayed buried in obscurity. And now, because of one nosy journalist, it was all at risk. But Victor Cole hadn't built an empire by being careless. He'd built it by being ruthless. And if Alexander had somehow survived, if he'd somehow clawed his way back from oblivion, then Victor would simply have to kill him properly this time. The next evening, Daniel was closing up the canteen when he noticed them. Two men sitting in a car across the street. They'd been there for an hour, watching. Not hiding, but not making their presence obvious either. It was the kind of surveillance that said, "We want you to know we're here." Daniel felt ice spread through his chest. He locked the front gate and went back inside, where Mama Ruth was counting the day's earnings. "Mama, there are men watching the canteen." She looked up sharply. "Police." "I don't think so." "Then who?" "I don't know." Mama Ruth stood and peered through the window. Her face hardened. "Those are Cheaty's boys. You owe him money?" "No." "Then why are they here?" Before Daniel could answer, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "They're coming for you tonight. Get out, now." It was from Claire. Daniel showed Mama Ruth the message. She read it and swore under her breath. "What did you do, Daniel?" "Nothing, I swear." "People don't send warnings like this over nothing." She grabbed his arm. "You need to leave. Right now. Go out the back. I'll handle." The front gate exploded inward. 6 men in black tactical gear poured into the canteen, weapons drawn. "Nobody moves! Down on the ground! Now!" Mama Ruth tried to step in front of Daniel, but one of the men shoved her aside. She hit the counter hard and crumpled. Daniel lunged forward and something cracked against the back of his skull. The world tilted. He hit the ground, tasting blood. Hands grabbed him, yanked his arms behind his back. Zip ties it into his wrists. Someone was reading him his rights, but the words were distorted, underwater. He saw Mama Ruth on the floor, not moving. Blood pooled beneath her head. "Mama!" He tried to crawl toward her, but a boot pressed down on his spine. "We've got drugs. Cocaine, at least 2 kilos. Call it in." Daniel's mind struggled to process the words. Drugs? He'd never touched drugs in his life. This was a setup, but why? Who wouldn't then, he understood. The journalist was right. He was in danger, and whoever wanted him gone had just made their move. They dragged him out of the canteen. The last thing he saw before they threw him into the back of a van was Mama Ruth's hand, pale and still against the dirty floor dot. They processed him like cargo. Photographs, fingerprints, a strip search that was designed to humiliate. Then they threw him into a holding cell with 15 other men, all of them watching him with the predatory stillness of animals assessing prey. Daniel kept his back to the wall and his mouth shut. He'd been in Eastbridge long enough to know how this worked. Show weakness and they'd tear you apart. Show too much strength and they'd test you. The key was invisibility. But in a cell this small, there was no such thing. A man with a scar running from his eye to his jaw leaned forward. "You're the one from the canteen. The one they said had 2 kilos. Daniel said nothing. "That's a lot of weight for a dishwasher. Are you working for someone?" "I don't know what they're talking about. I've never touched drugs." The scarred man laughed. It sounded like gravel grinding. "That's what they all say, but innocent people don't end up here. The cops make sure of that." Daniel closed his eyes. Mama Ruth. He needed to know if she was okay. But he had no phone, No way to reach anyone. He was completely cut off from the outside world, and whoever had done this to him had made sure of it. The night stretched on. Nobody slept. Around 3 in the morning, guards came and took him to an interrogation room. 2 detectives sat across from him, their faces bored and mechanical. This was routine for them. Daniel, no last name. Is that right? I don't remember my last name. Convenient. The detective slid a folder across their table. Inside were photographs of plastic bags filled with white powder. This was found in the storage room where you sleep, behind a loose panel in the wall. You want to tell us about it? It's not mine. Then whose is it? I don't know. Someone planted it. The detective smirked. Someone. Always someone. You know how many times I hear that in a week? I'm telling the truth. Here's the truth. You're looking at 15 to 20 years. But if you cooperate, if you tell us who you're working for, we can talk to the prosecutor. Get that number down. I'm not working for anyone. I wash dishes. I serve food, that's all. The detective leaned back, studying him. You're either the most convincing liar I've ever met, or the unluckiest bastard in the city. They sent him back to the holding cell. By morning, he was transferred to county lockup, a sprawling concrete fortress where violence was currency and survival was a daily negotiation. They assigned him to C Block, the general population. The moment he walked into the tier, he felt the weight of 100 eyes measuring him. A guard shoved him toward a cell. You're 47. Keep your head down and maybe you'll live long enough to see the trial. His cellmate was a wiry man in his 40s with hollow eyes and nervous hands. My name's Marcus, he said. First time inside? Yes. Then listen carefully. 3 rules. Don't borrow anything, don't disrespect anyone, and don't talk to the guards unless you want to be labeled a snitch. He paused. What are you in for? Drug possession. But I didn't do it. Marcus smiled sadly. Nobody in here did it. We're all innocent. The days blurred together. Daniel learned the rhythms of prison quickly, when to stay in his cell, when to move through the yard with purpose, how to eat without drawing attention. But no matter how careful he was, word had spread. The new guy, the one with the big drug charge. People wanted to know who he worked for, and when he couldn't give them answers, they got angry. It started small. Someone tripped him in the chow line. His food was stolen from his tray. His belongings were searched while he was in the shower. Then it escalated. A punch to the kidneys in the yard. A shiv pressed against his ribs in the bathroom. Whispered threats in the middle of the night. Marcus tried to warn him. Someone's put a price on you. I don't know who or why, but you need to watch your back. Every second. Who would pay to have me killed? Does it matter? Money talks here, and whoever wants you gone has deep pockets. Daniel realized with cold clarity that this was the plan all along. They hadn't just framed him. They'd sent him somewhere he could be eliminated quietly, with no questions asked. A prison stabbing. A tragic accident. Another body in an overcrowded system that didn't care about one more dead inmate. But Daniel had survived Eastbridge. He'd survived the streets, and he would survive this. He started paying attention, really paying attention. He noticed the guards who looked the other way when violence erupted. He noticed the inmates who seemed to have special privileges. He noticed the patterns, and slowly, carefully, he began to build alliances. Not through violence, through intelligence. There was an older inmate named Raymond who ran a chess game in the yard. Daniel joined, and within 3 games, he'd won Raymond's respect. Raymond knew everything that happened in C Block, and for the price of teaching him chess strategy, Raymond started sharing information. The contract on you. It came from outside, someone with serious connections. They want it to look random, but it's not. You're being hunted. Do you know who? No, but I know who might. There's a guy in D Block. Used to work private security for rich families before he got busted for extortion. My name's Terrence King. If anyone knows about high-level hits, it's him. Daniel filed the information away. But before he could figure out how to reach Terrence King, the attack came. It was in the shower. 3 men, all of them twice his size. They cornered him, and Daniel saw the glint of a sharpened toothbrush in one man's hand. He didn't think so. He reacted. Years of survival instinct kicked in. He dodged the first strike, slipped on the wet floor, and the shiv meant for his throat caught his shoulder instead. Blood bloomed red against white tile. Daniel grabbed the attacker's wrist and twisted hard. Something snapped. The man screamed. The other two rushed him, and Daniel fought like an animal. He wasn't trying to win. He was trying to survive long enough for the guards to intervene. By the time they pulled the men apart, Daniel was on the ground, bleeding from his shoulder and a gash across his ribs. They took him to the infirmary, stitched him up without anesthetic, and threw him in solitary confinement for fighting. Solitary was a concrete box 2 meters by 3 meters. No windows. No light except what came through the slot in the door. No human contact except when they slid food through twice a day. Daniel lost track of time. Hours became days, became nothing. He drifted in and out of consciousness, fever burning through him from infected wounds. And in the darkness, the dreams came back stronger than ever. He was a child, running through a mansion, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, a woman's voice calling after him, laughing. "Alexander, slow down! You'll fall!" He ran faster, his small feet slapping against stone, and then he was in a garden. Roses everywhere. A man with silver hair knelt beside him, showing him how to plant a seed. "This will grow into something beautiful, Alexander. Just like you." The man looked up, and Daniel saw his face clearly for the first time. It was Richard Cole, his father. Daniel woke up gasping. The memories were breaking through. Not all at once, but in fragments. A birthday party with helicopters, real helicopters, landing on the lawn. A private tutor teaching him Latin. His mother's perfume, something floral and expensive. And underneath it all, a sense of being loved completely, unconditionally. But then there was something else. A darker memory. He was older, maybe 16. His uncle Victor standing in his father's study, arguing. Voices raised. "You're making him soft, Richard. He'll never survive the business world like this. He needs to be harder, stronger." And his father's response, calm but firm, "He needs to be kind, Victor. The world has enough hard men." Victor's face had twisted with something Daniel now recognized as hatred. "You'll regret this." 2 weeks later, Daniel was released from solitary. Thinner, weaker, but sharper. The attack had changed something in him. He was done being prey. Marcus was waiting when Daniel returned to their cell. "You're alive. That's more than most people expected." "Who paid them?" "I don't know, but word is the contract's been pulled. Whoever wanted you dead changed their mind. Or maybe they're just waiting for a better opportunity." Daniel lay on his bunk and stared at the ceiling. He needed to get out of here. But more than that, he needed to understand what was happening. Why had Claire Morgan shown up in his life? Why had he been framed? And if he really was Alexander Cole, who had stolen his life and why? Outside the prison walls, Claire Morgan was fighting her own battle. The moment Daniel had been arrested, she'd known it was a setup. She tried to warn him, but she'd been too late. Now she was in a race against time to prove his innocence, before whoever wanted him dead tried again. She'd gone back to Dr. Helena Reeves's house, this time refusing to leave until the woman answered. When the door finally opened, Dr. Reeves looked 20 years older than her age. Her hands shook. Her eyes were hollow. "I can't talk to you," she said. "You have to. A man's life is at stake." "I know. And if I talk, it won't just be his life. It'll be mine." Claire stepped closer, her voice low and urgent. "Dr. Reeves, I know what you did. I know Victor Cole paid you to falsify records. I know you helped him stage Alexander's death. But that was 20 years ago. You were young. Maybe you were threatened. Maybe you didn't understand what you were part of. But you can make it right. You can tell the truth." Dr. Reeves's face crumpled. "You don't understand. Victor Cole doesn't make threats. He makes promises, and he keeps them." "What did he promise you?" "That if I ever spoke about what I knew, he'd make sure I died slowly, and that he'd do the same to my daughter." Tears streamed down her face. She was 8 years old when this started. I didn't have a choice. You have one now. Your daughter's grown. She's safe. But Alexander, Daniel, he's in prison being hunted. If you don't help him, he'll die. And you'll have to live with that. Dr. Reeves closed her eyes. When she opened them, something had shifted. What do you need? Everything. Medical records. What really happened the night of the crash. Where the boy ended up. All of it. Dr. Reeves disappeared into her house and returned with a locked metal box. Inside were documents, original medical files, photographs, handwritten notes. Alexander Cole didn't die in that crash, she said quietly. He was never on the helicopter. Victor staged the whole thing. The body they buried belonged to a John Doe from the morgue, someone with the right build and age. Victor paid the pilot to file a false flight plan and then paid him even more to disappear. The dental records I submitted were fabricated. Then where was Alexander? Victor drugged him, kept him sedated for 3 days. Then he had me alter the boy's medical records, give him a new identity, and admit him to a psychiatric facility under the name Daniel Price. The facility was on it. Victor owned the board. They kept Alexander sedated for months, told him he'd been in an accident, that he had no family. By the time he was released, he believed it. Claire's hands shook as she photographed every document. Why? Why would Victor do this to his own nephew? Because Richard was going to name Alexander as his sole heir. Victor would have gotten nothing, so he eliminated the competition. And Richard never suspected? Richard was destroyed by grief. He stopped asking questions. Victor made sure of that. Claire had everything she needed. She rushed back to her office and started writing. The story came together piece by piece. The conspiracy, the payoffs, the decades of lies. She worked through the night, and by dawn she had a 20,000-word exposé complete with scanned documents and interviews. She sent it to Marcus. Publish this, now, before anyone can stop us. Claire, if we publish this without absolute proof, we have proof. We have Dr. Reeves's testimony. We have the medical records. We have everything. What about DNA? I'm working on it, but we can't wait. Daniel's in prison and someone's trying to kill him. If we don't go public now, he won't live long enough for a DNA test. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, all right, I'll run it. But Claire, be ready. This is going to explode. The article went live at noon. Within an hour, it had been shared 10,000 times. Within 3 hours, major news networks were picking it up. By evening, it was the top story in the country. The dead heir, the forged death, the billionaire's brother who'd stolen everything. Victor Cole issued an immediate denial. His lawyers called it slander. But the public didn't care about the denials. They'd seen the documents. They'd heard Dr. Reeves's testimony. And they were furious. Protests erupted outside Cole Industries' headquarters. Investors demanded answers. The board called an emergency meeting. And in a hospital room across the city, Richard Cole, now 78 years old and recovering from a stroke, watched the news with tears streaming down his face. His son was alive. The pressure became too great. The district attorney, facing public outrage and undeniable evidence, ordered Daniel's release pending investigation. The drug charges were quietly dropped, and 3 days after Claire's article published, Daniel walked out of county lockup into blinding sunlight. Claire was waiting for him. She'd brought clean clothes, a hot meal, and a photograph. "There's someone who wants to meet you," she said. The hospital room was sterile and white. Richard Cole sat in bed, oxygen tubes in his nose, monitors beeping softly. He looked frail, ancient. But when Daniel walked through the door, his eyes came alive. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. Father and son. Strangers bound by blood and separated by 2 decades of lies. "Alexander?" Richard's voice was barely a whisper. Daniel stood frozen. He wanted to feel something. Recognition, love, anger. But all he felt was emptiness. This man was a stranger. "I don't remember you," he said finally. "I know, but I remember you. Every day for 20 years I've remembered you." Then why didn't you look for me? Because I thought you were dead. Victor showed me the body. I identified, his voice broke. I identified what I thought was your corpse. I buried you. I mourned you. And all that time you were alive. And I didn't know. Daniel felt something crack inside him. Not memory. Something deeper. I survived, he said. I survived things you can't imagine. I slept in shelters. I ate from garbage cans. I was beaten, starved, forgotten. And you were here, in your mansion, mourning a lie. I know, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to make that right. You can't. Some things can't be fixed. Richard reached out a trembling hand. Please, let me try. Daniel looked at that hand, pale, spotted with age, shaking with emotion. And slowly he took it. Not because he forgave, not because he understood, but because somewhere deep in the damaged machinery of his memory, he recognized the touch. The DNA test was a formality, but they did it anyway. 72 hours later, the results came back. 99.9% match. Daniel was Alexander Cole. The world had its confirmation. Victor Cole was arrested 2 days later. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records showing the payoffs, testimony from Dr. Reeves, security footage from the psychiatric facility showing Victor visiting repeatedly over the years, making sure his nephew stayed buried. The case was airtight. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Daniel attended every day, sitting in the front row, watching his uncle try to lie his way out of 2 decades of crimes. Victor's lawyers argued temporary insanity, misunderstanding, anything to avoid the truth. But the jury saw through it. They deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts: conspiracy, fraud, kidnapping, attempted murder. Victor Cole was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison. He was 68 years old. He would die behind bars. Daniel felt nothing watching the sentence handed down. No satisfaction, no relief. Just a hollow sense that justice, when it finally came, didn't heal anything. Richard offered him everything: the company, the estate, the billions of dollars sitting in trust. It's yours, he said. It was always supposed to be yours. But Daniel didn't want it. Not yet. He went back to Eastbridge first. Mama Ruth had survived the attack. She'd spent 2 weeks in the hospital with a severe concussion, but she was alive. When Daniel walked into her hospital room, she looked at him with eyes that knew everything. So it's true then. You're that boy, the one everyone's talking about. I'm still just Daniel. No, you're not, and you haven't been for a long time. She reached for his hand. But whoever you are, I'm glad you're safe. I'm going to rebuild the canteen, make it bigger, better, and I'm going to help Eastbridge. Really help it. Not with charity, with investment, with opportunity. Mama Ruth smiled. Then you're smarter than most rich people. Over the next 2 years, Daniel learned how power worked. Not the power of money, that was easy, but the power of influence, of strategy, of knowing when to push and when to wait. He studied his father's business. He met with the board. He listened more than he spoke. And slowly, carefully, he began to change things. He didn't abandon Eastbridge. He built a community center where the old drug houses used to be. He funded schools. He hired locally. He proved that investment in forgotten places wasn't charity. It was good business. The canteen was rebuilt, 3 times its original size. Mama Ruth ran it with a full staff and a menu that expanded every month. It became a gathering place, a symbol of what was possible. One evening, 2 years after his release, Daniel sat in the canteen watching a young boy, maybe 10 years old, wipe down tables with the same careful attention Daniel once had. The boy was quiet, thoughtful, older than his years. Daniel saw himself in that boy, saw the potential, the intelligence waiting to be unlocked. He walked over. "You do good work." The boy looked up, startled. "Thank you, sir. What's your name?" "Emmanuel." "You go to school, Emmanuel?" "Sometimes, when there's money for fees." Daniel handed him a card. "Give this to your mother. Tell her I'm offering you a scholarship. Full tuition, books, everything. But you have to keep working hard, deal?" Emmanuel's eyes went wide. "You're serious?" "Very serious." The boy clutched the card like it was made of gold. "I won't let you down. I know you won't." As Daniel watched Emmanuel run home to tell his mother, he realized something. Claire had been wrong. He hadn't been rescued. He'd been forged. Every hardship, every betrayal, every moment of survival had shaped him into something stronger than any billionaire's son could have been. He wasn't the heir who'd been lost. He was the man who'd been built from nothing. And that made all the difference. The canteen's lights glowed warm against the East Bridge night. Inside, people laughed and ate and argued and lived. Outside, the streets were still dangerous, still broken. But slowly, block by block, they were being rebuilt. Not by someone trying to save them, but by someone who understood them. Because Daniel hadn't forgotten where he came from, and he never would. The story of Alexander Cole ended the night he died in that helicopter. The story of Daniel, the man forged in the fires of Eastbridge, was just beginning. And this time, nobody could take it away from him.